Hey, what's going on guys? This is Coda with another battle report replay for Total War Warhammer. This time, I'll be bringing the Azrai to square up against the Faith, Steel, and Gunpowder of the Empire. Only this time, we're leaving the bows at home, in our trees, our tree houses. I'm not big on using missiles in this game, so obviously it only makes sense that I use the Wood Elves, but let's see if they can cut it in combat against Carl and the boys. Just a quick note guys, in the actual battle the wide shots start off really high up because of the deployment, but it zooms in very quickly after the match starts. So with that said, let's take a look at the armies. Alright, so let's jump right into it. Leading my army is Old Man Durthu himself. While he's normally just about the most expensive lord in the game, he wasn't in my build. I don't know how common or smart it was to do so, but I took absolutely everything off of him. And when he's bare bones, or bare roots, he only costs 250 more gold than a regular tree man. He loses some HP and melee defense, but gains 350 armor piercing damage, not to mention 20 melee attack and frenzy. So it goes without saying that no matter how you take him, Durthu is a high level threat. The only other hero in this build is the Branch Wraith, possibly my favorite utility unit in the entire game. While her primary purpose is to heal, the added buffs she gives to the front line are just as good. Almost. Plus 8 melee attack is fantastic. Not 8%, but 8. That's like 30 or 40% for most units. The speed boost never hurts either. She just has a lot of great utility in general. I mean, the physical resist, the fear, and on top of that, everyone always seems to just ignore her, which is pretty convenient. The infantry core of this army follows the buddy system. 2 Eternal Guard, 2 War Dancers, and 2 Wildwood Rangers. It's a solid variety of armor piercing, non-armor piercing, high melee attack, and anti-large. It absolutely puts the matchup game on me though. If I don't get these units in ideal matchups very early, it's game over. War Dancers manhandle most lightly armored infantry, but I can't get them stuck on something with heavy armor like Cav. And I'm on the fence about the Wildwood Lynx. They can deal a massive amount of damage, but they're essentially as easy to kill, if not a little bit easier, than Eternal Guard. Only they cost 3 times as much gold, so the verdict is out. Bolstering the line are 2 units of Treekin. I'm personally a huge fan of these units because of how tough they are. They have to be the most durable monstrous infantry in the game, at least one of them. I don't have the stats on that, but they have to, right? The way I use them is to just not expect them to actually do any damage. They just hold for a really long time. Also, I always support them with offensive infantry. All the Wood Elf melee infantry units can kind of like fight in between and underneath them, kind of like how Crypt Horrors and Zombies do. They're just one of those units that usually works out for me personally. Keyword is usually. I think it's because they buy time, and for us slow folk, that's about the most valuable thing in the game. As far as Cav go, I have 2 units of Wild Riders with shields. For me, Wild Riders are one of those units that either do extremely well or totally shit the bed, like never anything in between. Again, it's very much a matchup game. They do huge amounts of damage on the charge, but it's not armor piercing or anti-large, so 9 times out of 10 they lose Cav on Cav engagements. And when they do lose, they get destroyed faster than most. So I took the shields against Empire because the likelihood of encountering missiles is very high. And my last Cav unit are the armor-piercing shot Cav the Wood Elves never got. Hawk Riders are great on the charge. I know I said this build has no missiles, but I promise these guys fired maybe 2 missiles max in this entire game, because I use Hawk Riders as armor-piercing shot Cav, and they're usually pretty good at it. You know, keyword again is usually. Their major downside is their non-existent armor, but more so their pitifully low unit number. So can the fairy folk of the forest bring the heat against the mighty empire of mankind when they don't have any bows? Maybe. So my opponent brought a very good empire army that was clearly designed to effectively deal with Wood Elves. His army is led by none other than the man himself, Karl Franz. He's on a Pegasus instead of Deathclaw, which I've noticed is becoming a little bit more common, and I think it's because when he's on a Pegasus instead of a Griffin, his weapon damage and armor piercing don't actually change, and in fact his melee stack and speed go way up. Not to mention, he costs 300 less gold. What you lose, of course, is terror and the ability to, waddle out of combat. Like me, he pretty much took everything off of his lord, except for the Reikland Runefang. So with that, he can and does deal a pretty devastating offensive blow when he needs it the most. Instead of another hero, he's bringing a massive melee infantry contingent with 9 large-size units, and it's not all cheap infantry either. His 3 units of spearmen have shields for added melee defense, and he also has 3 units of greatswords. Now, at first glance, greatswords may seem like a bad pick against the Wood Elves because there really isn't any armor for them to pierce, but greatswords also have armor themselves, which makes them a lot more durable against the Wood Elves. Greatswords are just good units in my opinion. They rarely underperform, and nowadays, they take people off guard as well. Especially, like me. But his ranged infantry force is how you know my opponent knew exactly what he was fighting. 2 units of crossbowmen. Crossbowmen absolutely shred Wood Elves, and 1 unit of handgunners for any tree armor he might come up against. The strange thing about Wood Elves is that they lose firefights with Empire and Dwarves more often than they win, at least static firefights, because it becomes less about the shooting and more about who has or doesn't have the armor. So moving on. Bringing 1 artillery piece is a great way to ensure that you have the range advantage and that your opponent can't waste too much time trying to be fancy. It justifies camping and forces most factions to come to you. The mortar isn't the greatest thing since sliced bread, but it can be tactical at the start of the game, and at the end of the game, when it's blasting routing units and keeping them from rallying. And just in case there were any doubts about this army being made to crush Wood Elves, the 2 units of Knights of the Blazing Sun pretty much seal the deal. This is a recipe for killing knife ears if I've ever seen one. You don't know if you're going up against things like tree units in Durthu, or archers in kiting, or maybe a little bit of both. When Knights of the Blazing Sun are used well, their massive charge bonus and flaming attacks see that most units, tree units especially, get burned down to the ground. Alright guys, so those are the armies. Let's see how they do, and I'll see you on the field. Enjoy! So I ended up deciding not to do live commentary during this battle, but I very likely will just upload a second video with the exact same battle that does have it. So I'm just trying out new things here, and I personally thought it was very cool and kind of unique, but I don't really mind experimenting, guys. But with that said, if you do have any feedback on that or anything, then I'm always open to hear it. But in summary, the match wasn't insanely complicated anyway. Like most games, this one could be summed up by matchups early on. The Wood Elf build likely caught him off guard. Obviously, I'm not sure of that, but it's not extremely common to see no ranged units whatsoever in a Wood Elf build. So, I rushed up the center and concentrated on getting my infantry into matchups they would do well in. I got careless with my Hawk Riders early on, but it left his missile units very exposed, and the War Dancers got into them right off the bat. If you watch the replay again, you'll notice that the center of the battle collapses almost immediately. That's in part due to his build, that's in part due to the power of War Dancers against light armor. So, we split into two flanks. The Wild Riders really performed well in my opinion. They crippled pretty much only elite units. First they caught the Knight sleeping, and then I think that they got into two Greatsword units before finally getting beat down. So this is what Wild Riders can kind of do if you keep their frenzy up and keep them charging. As far as Durthu and Karl go, they both didn't really do much. Durthu remained pretty much untouched, but he also wasn't that effective offensively. And Karl was just too fast, that's one of Durthu's main weaknesses. He's super slow. But even so, Karl didn't do a lot. He kind of chased my Wild Riders around. He was activated a little bit late, in my opinion. And he may have been more effective on the other flank where, the Empire were a little bit stronger. Because late in the game, it did get a little bit dicey over there when he got his missiles back online. That blob was kind of at a standstill, and if there's one thing that can take out Durthu and Treekin in a hurry, it's 3 units of missiles firing. 2 volleys from a unit of handgunners can be devastating. So at that point I had to salvage what was left of my woodland petting zoo, and I got in and shut it off, and that was pretty much it. But as always, guys, I do hope that you enjoyed this battle. Let me know if you like the style or not. I'm very interested to hear feedback, or if not, that's cool too. As always, guys, this is Coda. Thank you for listening, and take care.